Welcome to the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
Welcome back to the Fifth Trooper Podcast. My name is Jay Shalansky, and my co-host is Evan Bulris.
Hey, how's it going?
This is Season 2, Episode 2 of the Fifth Trooper Podcast, and today we're really happy that Jon Russell, the North American event commander for Warlord Games, is joining us.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for inviting me, and this has been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to. I was really excited to get the invite from Evan, and this is awesome. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, since we've started this podcast, Evan has always been talking bolt action. You can't get this guy to shut up about bolt action. So it's time to talk bolt action. So, let's start here. This must be a weird time for you, huh? Being the North American event commander with no events. How's that going?
Yeah, you'd think that, right? Because, the last 2 years, I've been working for Warlord this is my third full-time year. I was off and on doing a lot in the past before then, but this is, I'm getting straight paid by those guys. And the last 2 years, I've traveled over 100,000 miles. And this year, maybe 2.
Yeah.
But even though I haven't been doing a lot of conventions, I hit a couple before the great pause kicked in. But I'm actually as busier than before because people are calling me, doing a lot of podcasts. We're doing a lot of stuff. I do a thing on Wednesdays, the Warlord Wednesday thing on Facebook. I actually just got back from my FLGS, dropping some stuff off of supplies to helping them stay afloat. So it's been busy, just not as busy. And, of course, more time to paint stuff to bring with me. So.
Yeah, I would say for us, too, it's been busy, just different kind of busy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's good.
Yeah, and as we move into the great thaw, we're actually kind of excited. I live in Oklahoma, and they just went to phase 2, so we're getting some of the fetters have been released, and we've checked with our lawyer. We've checked with we have a big convention here in Oklahoma for bolt action and Warlord Games, and we combined it with a good old convention called TwisterCon, and it's called Twisted Lords. And it kicks off in July. It's the 24th, 25th, 26th of July. And we're still a go. We're still green. And we've been cleared hot by the lawyer. And our event area is still there. It's at the Reed Center. If you go on to tabletop events, you'll find us under Twisted Lords. This is our second year as that. It's actually our 7th year as a convention. And we have a lot of fun. We do a lot of Warlord stuff in addition to everything else, like, Battletech. And there's a big game of Zombicide, it's kind of a homegrown thing. And we've got a lot of, I think we had Team Yankee out there, and then we have a big 40-man, 50-man tournament for bolt action, and it all starts off Friday afternoon. We have a museum here called the 45th Infantry Museum, and it shuts down at 4 p.m., but then reopens at 5 p.m. just for us, and the curator of the museum is there, Mike Gonzalez, and he walks us around personally for 2 hours, so we have the whole museum to ourselves. So
nice.
That's how the whole thing starts, and then we were here for 2.5, 3 days, and we're still a go, so we're kind of excited about that. So that'll be the first con that I'll attend since February when I was up in Genghis Khan. But I've almost done a convention in every single state in the Union except for some northwestern stuff and some northeast. Hit Canada twice last year. We're looking at Costa Rica this year, but that might be too far, so we'll see. And, of course, I go back to headquarters 3-4 times a year in the UK at Nottingham. So it has been busy, but not busy, but it's been busy, if that makes sense. So there you go.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
We're doing catching up a lot of miniatures and stuff. The Twisted Lords is kind of a unique event because we can have a lot of stuff that we necessarily can't travel with us. Like I have a big 1/200 scale model of the Hornet that we use for Blood Red Skies. It's about 4 foot long. It's kind of interesting to transport, but when it's local, it's pretty easy.
Nice.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back because I find this interesting too. Evan and I, Evan's been into bolt action for a long time, but recently we've kind of hit this kind of list of games that are tied in historically, to actual events and actual time periods. And so I kind of wanted to go to where you were talking about, doing the museum tour and the correlation with bolt action. So how much does the company strive in the development of the game, but also in these tournaments to try to make these somewhat accurate, even though historically speaking, even though it's a tabletop game?
Good question, Jay, and a long question, and it's going to be a. I'll answer. I'll try to answer everything I can.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to do as much bounce up. We try to schedule our release dates around important events, D-Day and Stalingrad, stuff like that. Sometimes outside events kick us around, so we can't do that. But we try to stay as historically accurate to the timeline as we can. Some people sometimes accuse us of not doing research on our books. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But my answer to that is just read the damn book. If you go in the back of the book, there's about a page and a half of bibliographies of anywhere from 20 to 50 books that we do research with, and or movies and TV shows. So we try to stay as historically accurate as we can. Myself and Steve Smith are the authors of the Korea book, the Bolt Action Korea book. And I spent 3 years trying to pitch it to the Warlord. They finally said yes. Then it took us a year and a half to get it written. And then we kept on writing, and we finally had to say stop. But I'm looking at a stack of books in my garage here that I'm still trying to go through. We've got a bibliography of about 30 books, Army archives, movies, TV shows from the United States and Korea and China. So we've tried to cover as best we could. But of course, there's all still people saying that, oh, but you should have done this, and don't you know about that? Yeah, we know about that, but we just couldn't cover it at the time. Hence, we might have some PDFs. And then on the tournament scene, sometimes there's a multiple different types of tournaments, Jay. And it depends upon if we're hooked into a store or hooked into a convention. And it can go either way. There's a really good historically themed a tournament that happens towards the end of the year in November up in Minnesota, and it's called Renegade GT. It's ran by the Snafu Podcast Boys, and they are very good at running a themed event. But then on the flip side, when we do a tournament like at Adepticon or ReaperCon, or we go down to MillenniaCon, it's pretty much open-ended. We try to sometimes control the list to generic lists, because sometimes people can get a little bit going down some rabbit holes and they can start doing some metagaming or alpha gaming. They kind of expand their list a little too hard. And then like at Adepticon, Jeremy and his friend Andrew run some really good themed events, and they do some themed events, and then we go in there and do the national event or the big event. So there's actually quite a plethora of different kinds of tournaments that we can run. And usually the tournament organizer, or TO, will contact me. And we have some packets that we can send out to them that give them like certificates and maybe some vouchers to use in the web store, maybe some challenge coins or some pins or some special items that you can hand out. So we have a packet in place that we can give to people who run tournaments at conventions. Now, for stores, sometimes we have people in place that are called Sarges. And those Sarges are handpicked by the stores themselves to help promote Warlord Games in their stores. So I don't have anything to do with those guys. But if it's a store that doesn't have a sergeant, I can get in there with some of my raiders or myself. Like I'll travel down to Tyler, Texas, and run with Atomic Games down there, and we'll do some stuff down there. So we try to stay historically accurate as we can. We try to stay as best we can, but at the end of the day, it's as my friend Jim says, it's a freaking game. So we want to have some fun, right?
Oh man, that's awesome. Speaking of that, like I was Nova. Oh geez, was it 2 years ago?
3 years ago now.
Was it 3? Geez, yeah. I showed up with a unpainted Conflict 47, which is
yes, you did.
With it's just bolt action, but with like monsters and mechs and some other stuff.
Yeah, it's bolt action plus with lasers, walkers, and bears. Oh my!
Yeah, I ran to I'd met you just briefly the Nova before that, and I came to you and like, look, man, like I just bought this army to play in this event. I'm sorry it's not painted, and you're like, yeah, just go play. So there's 3 of us in the room, and I forgot. Oh God, I forgot a tape measure, so I go buy one, and I immediately do the stretch, and I was just gonna let snap back, and the head shoots off.
Yep, that was funny.
You looked at me, and I'm like, oh God, no, not like this. So you were really kind enough to give me another like tape measure to get going. But so I actually that was my favorite event at Nova ever.
Yeah, it was good.
I know that sounds weird. I played so much Nova, but it was the 2 guys I played with we did a 3-man, just like King of the Hill kind of scenario, and It was like the chillest event. that was just really great. But that got me into actual bolt action. So my grandfather fought in the Pacific, so I wanted to paint up his unit,
Hmm.
and get that. So I guess where I'm going with this is, what kind of armies do you see when people play? Like, what do people bring to the table? Like, what do you see a lot of like personal stuff, or is it just things they liked out of movies, or what, something like that?
Yes.
Perfect.
And I have to ask Evan, where did he serve and when did he serve?
Oh God, I knew you were gonna ask that. He served in the
Uh-oh.
Pacific.
The reason why, Evan, is because later on this year, if everything goes right and the stars align, our Marianas and Palau book will come out. So we'll be running all over the Pacific.
Oh wow,
And
that's fantastic,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. So if your dad's or
Dad's
your
dad, yeah.
relative, yeah, dad's, your granddad's unit isn't in there, then maybe we can do a PDF or something like that or special on
Oh,
that.
that'd be
I,
fantastic,
I've
yeah.
seen I've seen guys run armies that had some kind of relative significance, Axis and ally,
Okay.
and I've seen guys who run. There was a guy, Mike, at LVO this year, was running an army unit, a U.S. Army unit, based on the old comic books, Unknown Soldier,
Oh,
Haunted Tank.
that's really cool,
Yeah,
actually,
that
yeah.
was really cool. Sergeant Rock was in there, and he had the whole Easy Company in there, so it was really kind of cool. And then I've seen guys run. We do sell the Kelly's Heroes. I'm sorry, it's not Kelly's Heroes. It's
Uh,
Oddball's Heroes.
okay.
And so we do have that, and we're talking about trying to get the Baker's dozen, or something like that in there. But it really is a personal preference. I've seen some guys roll in there with this guy had this really nicely etched wooden case with the Polish army emblem wood burned into the army and then trays inside of it. So I mean, and then you see some guys that walk in with bare minimum 3 colors and it's kind of like all generic power play.
No,
So
that's
I've
awesome.
seen the gamut. Lighted carrying bases. With lights, magnets. It's really, really. Every time I think that the bar has been reached, I go to another convention and it's elevated yet again. And something you referenced earlier too is talking about being chill. Before I did Warlord, I did a lot of stuff with Games Workshop
Okay.
and Forge World, and I did a lot of that work with them guys for about, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And we always had a problem in our tournaments. Some guy would always go off the deep end. And in the 3 years full time and about 6, 7 years off and on with Warlord, I think I could count on one hand and have fingers left over of incidents we had at bolt action events. It's the chillest group of boys you'll see. They'll be saying, "Oh, you forgot to move that guy." And, "Oh yeah, go ahead and redo that roll if you want." It's so cool. It's so refreshing, and I really enjoy it. And they police themselves pretty well. So, long answer, short question.
No, that's fair. So I got a follow up to you.
Sure.
So a lot of people, we were primarily a Legion podcast before this, and
Yes,
we.
and they were great. I listened to them. They're fantastic.
Oh, hey, excellent. Great. So we switched gears. So, it's funny because I was reading uh, learning how to play K-47 on the drive up to that Nova that year, and I'm like, wow, this is a lot like Legion. So what would be so a lot of our listeners may not even know what bolt action is. So what would be your nutshell pitch of what bolt action like plays like?
What you do is you pick up your set of Band of Brothers. That's our basic starter set's $112. And for $112, you get terrain, you get vehicles, you get one squad of Germans in a vehicle, 2 squads of U.S. Airborne, a house, a rule book, and all the stuff you need to do it. So you've got 2 full squads of Americans. That's 10 guys each. 1 full squad of Panzer Grenadiers and a half track and a busted up house. So you can start right out of the box. And it takes bolt action is designed. It's historically accurate, but it's got some wiggle room to be fast. You can play a 500 to 1,000 point game in 2 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Our rounds and tournaments run 2 hours to 2.5 hours, and you get about 5 to 6 turns in. So it's easy to pick up. A lot of our miniatures now are a hard plastic with arms and weapons, so you just have to glue the arms on. There was a time when we first started out that the weapons were separate. Some people like that, some people don't. But and we have some metal miniatures as well. The addiction starts after you pick up that Band of Brothers. Then you decide if you want to go Germans or Americans, or hey, let's try Finns or Greeks, or let's go Italians or Germans or Poles or French or British or Japanese. So we've got pretty much almost every single Axis or allied or forces friendly to those now represented in some form or fashion, either in the allied book or Axis book or any of the campaign books.
Awesome.
So pick your period and your timeline, and I'm pretty sure we'll have a miniature for it.
Hey,
And
that's super cool.
When Evan told me that you were coming on, I started to do a little bit of research because I had only heard, I only heard about it in the periphery from Evan, but I was so deep into Legion that I was like, I can't listen right now. Like, so, but now that my eyes are open, I honestly all day today have been staring at the Conflict 47, the C4th Highlanders of Canada's Walker platoon. I can't stop looking at it. It's so amazing.
Yeah. The bolt action's been around for over 12 years, and K-47's been around with us for about 4 or 5. It came out. K-47 came out just as we were transitioning into Bolt Action 2. So it was kind of like Bolt Action 1.0, and then it got updated in Resurgence and Divergent. No, not Divergent. It was Resurgence and I just
Defiance.
Defiance, thank you.
Yep.
That brought it up to about 1.2, 1.7. So it's almost Bolt Action 2.0. But what's really cool about our models that doesn't happen usually in Legion or in Warlord Warhammer or Warhammer 40K, when you buy a Space Marine, he's a Space Marine for that forever. Or if you buy, Stormtroopers or Stormtroopers, that's all you can use them for. If you buy a U.S. Army box set of infantry, you can use that U.S. Army box set. You get 30 miniatures for like $41. You can use it for World War II bolt action. You can use it for K-47, and you can use it for Korea. So you're getting 3 bang for your buck for one box of dudes that roll through all those periods.
That's awesome. So what was kind of the thought with Conflict 47 or K-47 as you're calling it? Like, I love it, and I mean, I'm as much as bolt action seemed interesting to me. I started looking at the K-47 stuff, and this is what's going to sell me. I'm telling you right now. Like, I've already started adding stuff into my cart, and I don't even know what I'm doing. But I'm like, yep, buy, because it reminds me of like Command and Conquer Red Alert.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like obsessed right now with it. So how did that divergence kind of happen? Because it's almost like all the stories that the like American GIs used to tell people about what the like Nazis were working on, right? Like that's what this seems like.
The basic thing about K-47 is everything was cool till about 1942 or 43 when they first did the Manhattan Project test. And when that happened, well, this is a concept that Clockwork Orange brought to Warlord Games, and it fit into our schematic that we wanted to present at the time. So we took them on and we're supporting them. Most of the stuff, about 90% of the stuff comes from Clockwork, or about 100%. We just help market their stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had miniatures that would fit in. And when they looked at the whole line of guys out there doing this, they figured we had the best representation of what they wanted to do for armies. Mm. So the idea behind K-47 is when the Manhattan Project went off, it opened a rift in time and space, and radio signals started coming out of that rift. And once it was translated, it was for new technologies that could be used in the war. Now, the Allies tried to keep it as best they could and tight to their chest, and they weren't sure about Uncle Joe and his boys, so they didn't share it fast enough with the Russians. Mm-hmm. And the Russians were pretty pissed about it, so they left the Allies and started the war on their own. And the Allies were hesitant to use the darker side of some of the stuff that they heard in the whispers of the rift. Now, when we dropped nuke on Nagasaki and Berlin in this timeline, that's how the Axis got that technology. And they really didn't care how it was used. So now you've got animated corpses not zombies, animated corpses. And we've got bears, and we've got werewolves and Nachyagas, which are flying Batmen, and we've got the Siberian Terror Force, which are guys basically hooked up on antifreeze, and it's just and walkers. So now you got walking tanks that are moving around. So it's got all that. It's got that hook and historical bedrock. So it's believable, but then they stretch it into the unbelievable. And then when the Japanese and Finns came out in Resurgence, that expanded the whole Japanese line. And oh my God, now you got ghost troops that walk through walls.
That's super cool.
And the Shibata, yeah, that's the model you get with that book too is really cool. He's halfway through a wall, and those guys are like the man in the deep diving suit. You don't see his face or anything. You see that big old red eye coming at you. And then you got the Shibata, which are the animated corpses for the Japanese. Now, they don't care who they animate. So if you look close at the Japanese animated corpses, there's Japanese in there, there's British, there's Australian, there's American. They don't care. Whereas the Germans are strictly German. So and the Japanese are a little bit, they really don't care. So they've gone to crazy stuff. And then, of course, the Russians are trying to do what they can with their big bolts and the big metal monsters. So it has just a much whiff of reality that really makes you go, oh, that's kind of cool. And then when Defiance came out, that's when we had the Italians and the Canadians. And the Italians are kind of cool. Now, if you get into K-47, you can buy a starter army for the Germans, the British, the Japanese, and the Americans. You can't buy one for the Italians because the Italians are split. There's the North Italians and the South Italians. South Italians are all allied, so they have a lot of allied-looking or allied-related equipment and walkers, whereas the Northern Italians have a lot of German or Axis-related items, so they look more that way. So that's how that was split. So that's okay for the 7 rolls out.
It's completely amazing to me, and I think just the ability to, because if you look, so when you guys get a chance for the listeners, go check it out on the website. It's kind of exactly how he explains it, where like you're looking at some of these figures and I'm like, oh yeah, I could see, like it's kind of that like retro future, like mid 80s kind of, what they thought the future would be type of stuff. And man, I love it. I think it looks really cool. And I know that Evan has an army, and I think we definitely need to get this on the table.
Yeah, my buddy painted. I went British for K-47, and I have.
Nice! You have War Dogs.
Yeah, actually, So actually, speaking of the War Dogs, he painted a set of them, and I have one that's Spuds McKenzie, the original rock and roll dog. So that was my.
Right.
They ran toward a German heavy machine gun line, and I think 2 made it. So that was pretty good.
And the whole reason why they designed those dogs, and what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, out there in listener land, is we're talking about the British War Dogs who bred those pit bull kind of looking dogs that they have over there to the size of almost the size of a calf or a small cow, and they were designed to be released across the battlefield to tear up animated corpses. Now you have to be careful if you get in front of them, because they don't care friend or foe; they'll tear you apart. So, but they were designed to rip apart animated corpses.
Oh, that's perfect. So, speaking of, moving on to 2 other games here that I just been on my head. Blood Red Skies.
Yes.
So what's funny? I have a story about Blood Red Skies. This was back Gen Con, 2 years ago. I was watching digitally, and I was real sick of X-Wing 1.0.
Yes.
And I was on the button to just like figure it all out, sell it, and then they said 2.0, and I was like, cool, I'm in still, but I had already bought in a bunch of. I was just going to move to Blood Red Skies because it was World War II, and it was just not X-Wing 1.0, but I still got to play a small scale skirmish playing game,
right.
And there's really not a whole lot of that. So what would be your pitch for Blood Red Skies? Because that's kind of like I wish it kind of had more notoriety, and I think a lot more people would be interested if they actually knew what it was.
Blood Red Skies is designed by the Andy Chambers, the Archfiend himself. And he'd been playing with that thing for about 8 years, and it was before X-Wing came out. He was still pounding on that stuff. So some people, I like to tell them that I think, Maybe X-Wing stole from Blood Red Skies instead of Blood Red Skies stealing from X-Wing, but that's just me and my personal opinion. Blood Red Skies is designed to play a World War II aircraft game, 12 aircraft, 45 minutes. My record is at NashCon 2 years ago, I had 11 guys walk up to my booth wanting to learn how to play. So that's 22 aircraft on the board. 22 1/200 scale aircraft ready to play. 11 people. From hello, my name is Jon Russell, this is Blood Red Skies, to knock it off, game over, 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
22 aircraft. Yeah. It's designed for a fast-paced fighter action that Andy came up with that it has runs the gamut from 39 to 45. Now, we're slowly filling in holes. We're trying to get more things. And in fact, we were scheduled to release this summer, in fact, next month, but now it's going to be pushed back a month or two because of the great pause. Blood Red Skies Midway.
Oh, okay.
Blood Red
That's
Skies
cool, yeah.
first came out as the Battle of Britain section, and it's got 109s and one Spitfires in it. But the Blood Red Skies Midway will have carrier aircraft and more Japanese and more American stuff. So that's going to come out. Now, since Blood Red Skies has come out, it's been out for about 3 years, 4 years now. We've got about 40 different aircraft, about 20 different pilots, named aced pilots. So you can fly, the Blonde Knight, Hartman, or Tex Hill from the Flying Tigers. Baba Black Sheep's, Pappy Boyington's in there. I mean, you can fly. And of course, Johnny Red from the Falcons and the Rebellion 2000 AD comic strip, Johnny Red. So you can fly just about anything from Japan, America, British, German, Russian, and we're getting some other nationalities in there as we can. It is a fast and fun game to play. All you'll need to do is drop $50 for the starter set. And you get 12 aircraft in there, 6 Spitfires and 6 ME-109s, and you'll be able to start playing within minutes of opening that box. And I apologize for the addiction that you're going to get after the playing that. So there's a bunch of guys over that came to Adepticon last year, and I gave them a demo, much like I gave you, Evan.
Yeah.
And now they are the Lead Pursuit podcast. They're all 3 former members of the military, all aviators in some form or fashion,
nice.
and they have a passion for Blood Red Skies. And in fact, so much so that we're going to host the Gathering of Eagles in September, the second week of September, 9th, 10th, 11th, for a Gathering of Eagles. It's a small event in Indianapolis, 40 to 60 people, and it's all about playing Blood Red Skies. We're going to show the 1/200 scale Hornet, which is about 4 feet long, for the release of Midway. And well, they did a complete scenario pack and tournament kind of thing for Malta. They commissioned a 4 foot by 6 foot map of Malta from 1940, 41, 42. I'm sorry, I might have got the date wrong. But they've got the map of the Malta island, and they've got scenarios and the aircraft to play it. And we were going to do it at Adepticon, and we were going to show the big release of Blood Red Skies Midway. We were going to show Malta, and then we were also going to introduce people to what we call Big Red Skies. Big Red Skies is Blood Red Skies with 1/72 scale Aerofix aircraft.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah, so the addiction just keeps on going, because when we released Korea, then Andy said, well, let's do jets. So then MiG came out, so now you can do F-86s and MiGs. So that's going on, and now we're even play testing Rolling Thunder, which is going to be Vietnam for Blood Red Skies.
Oh,
We're
my
actually
God,
working
that's
on
so
that
cool.
right now. So yeah,
Jeez.
so there's actually a playtest group that we're working on. And then those Lead Pursuit guys love Blood Red Skies so much so that they got with Tabletop Simulator, and now you can play Blood Red Skies on Tabletop Simulator on Steam. So,
That's awesome. Okay, hey.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
super
so go on there, and they're just, at first we only had Spitfires and 109s, but there's a guy named Steve that's been cranking out a crap load of stuff for us. So there's more and more aircraft, and then of course you can do MiG Alley. So
Okay.
I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome. So my next
slippery slope.
piece, no, you could, my next piece is Cruel Seas. I think
Yes.
this was a game I saw you at Adepticon last year, and I
Yep.
think did it
Just came
launch
out.
then?
December. It came out in December.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing you talking about it, and I have one of the like one of the sprues for it. But would be your I know I keep having you pitch these games, but like for this one, I
that's fine.
kind of love to hear like what your pitch on this would be.
Well, Cruel Sea started about 4 years ago when John Stoddard read a book. And Jon Stollard is the CEO of Warlord Games. I've known him for about 20 years now, and he's a really good friend of mine. And he read a book, and he got and excited about it, and he wanted to make a game about it. So this is his first game that he's designed.
Oh wow,
and,
okay.
Yeah, in the 30 plus years he worked at Warlord Games Workshop, and then when he was made redundant, him and Paul Sawyer, aka the Fat Bloke from Games Workshop days, sat down around Jon Stollard's table and created Warlord Games. And the first thing they made was some Romans, and in fact, the first store they ever buy them was Bookhurst out in California.
Okay.
And yeah, so there's some history for you, trivia. And he made this game, but he didn't want to dig into the budget for Warlord and new games and stuff. So he took money out of his pocket and started talking to the guys over at Skytrex, and they built some ships for him. And the reason why it's 1/300 scale, a lot of people complain and moan about the scale for Cruel Seas. The reason why John picked 1/300 scale is because it's cool.
Yep.
And you can see guys on the deck.
Yeah.
The detail is just about perfect where you can see dudes on standing around it, but it's not too terribly big and nasty. It's quick, it's fast, it's simple. When it first was released, some people were complaining about there was some. When we send our books to the printer to get printed, we have full faith and allegiance that it's going to come out the way we gave it to them. Not necessarily happens that way sometimes. Happened on my Korea book and happened on the Cruel Seas. Some of the stuff got misprinted or mistyped or misset. So in good faith, we released a Redis sheet so that you could actually cut that out and put it into the place of the rule book. And it was about 10 pages, really only about a page and a half of changes. But people were complaining about that. Oh, it's just brand new and you rushed it and it's 10 pages. Well, did you really read the book? Hopefully you see a pattern here. And Cruel Seas is a fast and fun. It's $80 to start. It's a fast and fun game. You can get 4 snail boats and 6 Vosper boats. I call it that knife fighting in the dark closet that happened all over the world. It was, Korea is known as the Forgotten War, but the little boat actions is the forgotten side of World War II. It is everywhere. It was in the Mediterranean. It was in the Pacific. It was in the Baltic. It was in the Atlantic. This is about those guys going out every night trying to find convoys, trying to find other boats, landing spies or getting supplies or doing reconnaissance on the enemy or dropping off commandos. This is all those sneaky stuff that happened at night. And in fact, we're going to expand it a little bit into Korea when there's a thing that we discovered after the war that the Koreans had trained up a bunch of super trooper commandos to go down and raid and hit Pusan and destroy it. And if that would have happened, we never would have had a fallback position, and Korea would have been done in 6 months. So you can recreate a lot of historical stuff. And with Midway coming out, you can now even start doing a lot of the carrier and fleet actions. Not that's going to be Victory at Sea, so that's another game we'll talk about later. But Cruel Seas leads up to a little bit of that. Blood Red Skies is the one that's doing Midway, sorry. But we just released an expansion to Cruel Seas called Close Quarters, which adds 2 more fleets. Now, initially we came out with, hopefully I get them all right here, Italians, Russians, Japanese, Americans, British, and Germans. Okay, so I have 6 fleets of those. And then we've now released with Close Quarters the Finns and then Yugoslav's partisan fleet, the Tito Tigers. So those are out there, and there's 12 more scenarios there with some historical stuff like the raid on St. Nazaire, Operation Chariot. So you can pretty much recreate MacArthur's Dash from the Philippines. You can recreate going down the slot with the Japanese trying to reinforce Guadalcanal and the American small little PT boats running around trying to shoot them in the dark. It's fast, it's fun, it's crazy, and it's very nail-biting, edge of your sheets kind of stuff. When you're done with bolt action and when you're done with Cruel Seas and you're done with Blood Red Skies, you can sit back, and even K-47, you can sit back when the game's done, you can say, man, I think I just watched a movie. Because that's the way these games play. And Cruel Seas it's easy to get into. You can buy a complete American, German, Russian, British, or Italian fleet for $100.
Okay.
And that gets you all the boats you need to start a fleet. Now you can always buy more suicide boats or Linz boats or more destroyer. The biggest boat you'll see is a destroyer, and they're huge. But usually it's designed for those small little boats, E-boats, the Sheba ferries that the Germans were going to use to invade England. So there's a lot of that action in Cruel Seas.
All right. Now, John, I have the toughest question for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
And it's in game form. It's a little
Okay.
game we call Try by Trash. So
Excellent.
the rules are you can play one of these games one more time. You get one of these games that you can play for the rest of your life, and you always get to play it. And one of these games you can never play again. Bolt Action, Blood Red Skies, or Cruel Seas.
Oh, damn. That is a tough question. Bolt Action forever.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I can play it one more time, then I'm done.
Yep.
Ooh, that's a tough one. And then what's the other one? I can never play again?
Yep.
You can never touch it again. It's over for you. It's going in the trash. Goodbye.
That's tough. Between these three?
Mm-hmm.
Your Bolt Action will be forever.
All right.
One more time would have to be Blood Red Skies. Then I guess Cruel Seas have to go in the trash.
It's fair.
Not that,
Not because it's trash. No, we understand.
Yeah.
say that as I look across my work desk and there's a Japanese invasion boat barge right there.
Staring right, packing your eyes as you said it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
You bastard.
Okay, let's play it again. And this time we're going to talk about 3 games we haven't talked about on the podcast.
Okay.
But same game with Black Powder, Black Seas, and Pike, and the Gladiator game.
Oh, SPQR.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got SPQR,
Yep, Black Seas and Black Powder.
Black Seas, and Black Powder. Okay. Black Powder forever.
Yep.
Because every time I go over, we always play it on Thursday nights at John's house, and I absolutely love it.
Okay.
And Black Powder is a game. Well, we'll get into that later.
Yeah, we can tell everybody. Go ahead. We can do it now.
Well, Black Powder was the first real rule set that Warlord Games made, and it's written by Rick Priestley and Jervis Johnson. And it's a gentleman game to have fun, go over to a place, play with Napoleonics for 4 hours, and you're done. Napoleonics historically has been a grinding, eye-weeping, nail-gnashing, 6 hours, 3 moves turn kind of unbelievable game system. It's fun to play. You get grognards in there that say you don't have the right Prussian blue because that's the wrong color of blue on your guys. But, hey, they're everywhere. Rivet counters, as you call them, panel counters. But with the advancement and the release of Black Powder, it's designed to play fast, fun, and you're over in 3-4 hours. It's Rick Priestley and Jervis Johnson from Games Workshop wrote up the rules, and then a lot of the guys kind of pitched in. Nigel Stillman and there's some other ones, John Stollard and Paul Sawyer and other guys. And it's kind of based loosely off the old War Master game from Games Workshop, and it's quick and fast. And it's in 28, and it's beautiful. And now we've got a bunch of expansions for that. Zulu. We just released Dark and Bloody Ground, which is French-Indian Wars. We've got American Civil War. We've got American War for Independence. We call it Revolutionary War, but in England they call it the AWI, American War for Independence. And then we've also got Sudan. And then we released what was the last one? Oh, and then I can look at the shelf for all the books, but there's about 7 or 8 books now out for Black Powder, and we're always coming out with another one. So Black Powder would be my forever play.
Okay.
Play one more time would be SPQR, because SPQR has only been out for a year, and we've sold out of it, and we're going to re-release it when this great thaw happens again, and we're going to be able to update it, and it's not going to change. It's just we had a lot of input, and we're going to put some stuff in there and add even more. And there's 13 war bands you can play with, and it's a skirmish level game, and we've released there's 13 armies that you can play in there. Greeks, Romans, Macedonians, Picts, Gauls, all kinds of stuff. Dacians, Samaritans, and it's a really fun, fast, quick game, and I love it. And I don't want to say anything bad about Gabriel, but I love Black Seas as well. But if I had to, in this horrible choices you gave me, Black Seas would be the one I have to say never play again. But Black Seas is based off of Cruel Seas, and it's it's 1/700 scale, because if we did it 1, 2, or 300, it'd be huge. These boats would be enormous. And it's Age of Sail, and we've got a lot of cool boats out for that. The 4 basic armies, were the British and the French, and then they released the Americans and the Spanish. The Americans really didn't have a fleet at the time, a lot of cruisers and frigates, but not cruisers, frigates and ships of the line. They didn't have any big ships, the Constitution, the President, and then the United States. Those 3 ships were kind of cool, and we have those models. But we're going to do some more things. Some cool things are in the pipe for coming out later. And Gabriel came out with a fantastic games, quick and fast. Again, there's a theme in games work in our games that we have coming out of our workshops and that we have at Warlord Games is fast and fun and furious with the best historical miniatures in the world. So our miniatures look great. Our game systems are fast. They play a little loose with some of the game mechanics because we want to get through a game quickly. We don't want to spend 7 hours and then come back the next day and do another 7 hours like the old Napoleonic games used to be. So for those 3, Black Powder, SPQR, and then Black Seas.
All right. No more selling, more pain. Are you ready?
Okay, sounds good.
Try by trash, bolt action, Black Powder, Conflict 47.
Okay, bolt action forever.
Yep.
Black Powder one more time, and goodbye. Goodbye, KSF 47.
Oh, I thought that was going to be harder for you, but all right, that's fine.
Now that I know the game, it's pretty easy.
So it sounds like, based on all my questioning, that you're a big bolt action fan.
Well, of course. I mean, several years ago, when John was made redundant and came up with Warlord Games, and I was still working at my government position, but still doing things and running the circuits for cons, I'd run into John a couple of times, and I'd worked with John at Games Workshop, and I was itching for a World War II game, and the only thing out there at the time was Flames of War, 120 millimeter kind of game, and it's okay, I like it, but it didn't scratch that itch like 28. There was nothing that was really out there. I mean, there was WFG Frontline from Walt out in Colorado. It was kind of fun, but there was nothing that had that movie-based, quick and fast, historically bite kind of game. And we started play testing. I'm one of the play testers for Bolt Action, so of course I'm going to love it. There's a secret for you. Some of the rules in there are mine. The cavalry rules are near and dear to my heart because I wrote them. So I like my cavalry and my poles. And he'd give me some miniatures, and we'd play with my group here, and we'd do some back and forth. And then when the second edition came out, we did it again. So my name's in a couple of the books. I mean, I don't want to, be name tosser and stuff, but Bolt Action is really, really close to my heart, and it's because I had so much involvement with it. And then when I wrote with Steve Smith, Bolt Action Korea, that's when I really that's my passion for sure is Bolt Action Korea. But that's a whole nother 45-minute talk. We did a talk with No Dice No Glory at Nova 2 years ago when Evan was there, and we talked with Mitch from No Dice No Glory, myself, Steve Smith, and then one of my raiders, Ed Nelson. We talked about Bolt Action Korea, and we talked about which we never talked about yet at all today, Gates of Antares, for 2.5 hours. So I could talk all day about Korea. Yeah. So Bolt Action is very near and dear to my heart.
Well, that's good. So, all right, let me ask you this question. Are you ready?
Outside
of the Warlord Games stable of all their amazing games,
anything else? No, go.
what other games have you been into recently?
I have a good friend over at Chip Theory Games. There's some fantastic board games, so I like to play in some of that stuff. Chip Theory is great, and then of course Seppi does some really good. What's the name of that company? He does Squirrel or Die. And those are quick little fast games. He had End of the Line. That's another good game to play. Those are fun games. And then I'm into pulp. So I like, Congo, Death in Dark Africa. And we're kind of doing a kind of game for ourselves like that. Pulp fiction, any kind of pulpy kind of thing that's kind of cool for me. Gates of Antares is my thing, but that's a Warlord product. I used to play a lot of 40K and Lord of the Rings. I still play some Lord of the Rings, and I like that. And that's War of the Ring. That was my jam for a while. But a little bit of board gaming, a little bit of miniatures. Mostly miniatures, though. I've been playing miniatures for over 30 years now, and it's kind of hard to get out of the blood.
Yeah, I think once that bug bites, you can't ever get rid of that itch.
We used to play I had owned a store for a while too when I first got out of college. We played a lot of Dawn Patrol, a lot of World War I stuff. So those are still kind of itching to my scratch. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's so funny because I started with Warhammer Fantasy and was just like obsessed with it, and then and then they changed the rules, and I wasn't a big fan, and so I was still playing 8th edition. you know.
Yes.
And then Legion rolled around, and I was like, "Well, there's my new game," and I just like jumped right over there.
Yep. A lot of people will accuse us of being butterflies, but it's what it is. It's I talked about this last week during our Warlord Wednesday live video feed on Facebook. Was you'll flutter from one project to another. You know, you'll paint some Black Sea stuff, then you'll paint some Clural Seas, then you go over and do Blood Red Skies, and you go back over to Bolt Action. And so you have a couple projects laying around your workbench. And when you look at that, don't let that get you down, because you have to let that juice flow. That creative juice needs to be nurtured and flowed, and you got to let it go. And you've got to not, when you stop painting or when you stop playing is when it's going to die. So you need to bounce around. So you need to have a couple itches. You need to do Legion. You need to do Bolt Action. You need to do different things just to keep you creative and young and live inside. And that's what's important with gaming. And even though we've all been stuck at our houses, we've still been able to find ways to get around it. I mean, there's some guys out in New Mexico that are doing small man, 2-man games and stuff that they come over and they do all the sanitation and play their game and go. So.
And I would say, too, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like when you play a different game, like if you, like, you know, we've been playing Legion, but if I was to bounce over to Conflict 47, which it's in my head is what's going to happen,
Sure.
I think you get a new appreciation for the other games and almost kind of a different viewpoint of the game. So then when you go back to like Legion or back to Bolt Action from playing another game, that maybe you become a better player almost at that game because you see it in a different light a little bit.
Exactly, Jay. You've broadened your spectrum of conflict, and now you can have, let's apply the Zulu horns of the buffalo on this Legion character, and boom, now you got a tactic that your opponent has never seen before, and you win the game.
Yeah. I like winning games. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, man,
Easy peasy, anytime.
It's a good time.
I always enjoy doing these. They're a lot of fun because we get a chance to expand the hobby, share our things, and tell stories. I
would literally love to have you back on to Just Talk Conflict 47.
Anytime. My calendar is kind of open right now.
So get it in soon is what you're telling me before phase 2 or phase 3 happen.
Yeah, well, I always make time for this because this is, you guys are the bread and butter of our industry. You guys are the ones that have a passion, so much so that you now make a podcast about it. And even if you have a following of 100 or 10,000, it doesn't matter. You're out there advocating for a game, and you guys are an important part of this industry. So there's no way I would never say no to anything like this.
Well, thanks, man.
We appreciate that, man.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey guys, take care. And may your dice be hot and your beverages be cool.
Stay red.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.